Joanie Connell, finally in a CTO studio. Why did it take you so long?
I'm curious.
Joanie, one of our esteemed facilitators in 7 CTOs, an amazing thinker, founder of Flexible Work Solutions, a wonderful friend to me over the years. How did we meet?
Oh, that is a good question. It may have been Scott Crowitz.
Okay.
He's a good friend as well.
Yeah, I get the you should meet so and so a lot,
Mhm.
but then they don't often turn into friendships, and I'm super thankful for our friendship.
Me too.
And I don't know why my camera is doing this. It's kind of funny. So Joni, I I wanted to chat with you because we're going into our next trimester with 7 CTOs, and going to really dig into the coaching mindset and a lot of, I'm sure, the work that you do and the work that you've seen also in 7 CTOs is requires of our leaders to really coach their employees and to be there. And in all the work that I've done, I feel like it all starts with this curiosity mindset, which is, well, let me ask you. When I say to you curiosity or mindset in the, or curiosity in the workplace, what comes up for you?
Well, I would say inquiry. Yes, being inquisitive, wondering, asking questions.
Yeah, and I think the curiosity mindset of saying, I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know what the outcome of this is, but I am participating.
No, that's really good. I mean, part of the curiosity mindset is the ability or the courage to even take some risks, right? To be vulnerable, to ask the questions and not know the answers, to hear what others have to say, to try something new that may not work. So, in the workplace, we talk about curiosity in terms of giving people that room to experiment and ask questions without punishment, as well as supporting people to try things and take some risks.
Yeah, and I'm as I'm digging into this concept, the same goes for empathy and awareness and all these words that we tend to throw around in the modern workplace, and yet if you really dig into the concepts, they are super damn hard. And as a technical mind and as an engineering leader and as people who are relentlessly pursuing the uncovering and getting rid of uncertainty and galvanizing predictability, and this world of curiosity is actually an antithesis to what we feel we need to excel at work, right?
To some extent, yes. I mean, I would say that engineers, I talk to a lot of engineers, and having come out of engineering myself, I'd say a very common thread is as children, engineers take things apart to try to figure out how they work, right? So that's the curiosity. I mean, even just a moment ago, you're playing with a camera going, I wonder why it's doing this, right? So that's curiosity, but it's trying to find the answer. So part of it is looking for answers and trying to figure out how things work, but part of it is keeping an open mind that you may not get an answer, you may not know the answer. Somebody else might have a different perspective. Maybe it's gray, it's not black and white. So I see, both sides of that.
Yeah, I love that analogy of the curiosity that drives you to take the camera apart, and it's almost to find the answer. But then when it comes to people, and the uncertainty that comes from relationships, how much harder it might be to apply curiosity to our relationships.
Absolutely. Actually, that's really where I come into play a lot in terms of curiosity, because I help people with the people side of things, relationship management, how to have empathy. It starts with curiosity, right? Sometimes people think empathy is saying, oh, well, they must feel this way, so I'm going to give them some of my empathy in that. And instead of saying, how do you feel? Right? Because the curiosity is, you're assuming how they feel, as opposed to curiosity is asking how they feel. So that's a first step. And
Yes.
that also involves humility, that you don't know, right? And being open that they might feel something completely different. And there are tons of examples. I mean, somebody gets fired from their job and you assume they must be devastated, but maybe they're relieved. Maybe they were in over their heads and they were so glad to finally have it be over, or they were actually looking at another job and didn't know how to tell their friend that they wanted to leave. There could be a lot of other things going on. So being curious and asking people is a first step in understanding how they're feeling, and trying to give them empathy.
I absolutely love that empathy angle, because yes, I think empathy done wrong is the attempt to try and put yourself in that person's shoes leaves you guessing, oh, they must feel, or this,
Mhm.
if it were me, this is what I would feel, when really that is bypassing the step of just finding out, well, how are they feeling, or what is happening for them right now. That's an amazing connection for me.
Sometimes you can try it by saying, "Wow, if that were me, I would feel this way," and then ask, "Is that how you're feeling?" But really asking the person how they're reacting to something or how they're feeling is the curiosity piece, and being open to their different opinion or perspective, and maybe not even understanding it, but appreciating it.
I love it. So in the workplace, as you're working with management styles or organizations, managers and employees, how would you coach curiosity inside of these teams, or how are you seeing it play out in these relationships at work?
Well, that's a good question. Let's see. So, in terms of curiosity, maybe step back for a second. I mean, we've got it being both a mindset as well as a trait. I mean, some people are more curious than others, or have um, a more openness. We call it in the five-factor model of personality, more openness, or inquisitive by nature, and other models. So putting together some diversity in your teams. Now we think of diversity, equity, inclusion in terms of race and culture and gender and all that, but just in terms of different perspectives and backgrounds and experience levels as well. That can get people wondering and bringing in new perspectives, and then encouraging people to inquire from others and hear what their perspective is and how it be different. But the another thing, like I said before, is allowing room for people to ask questions and not get punished. And this comes up actually for leaders, which is slightly different. Leaders often come to me with a conundrum. If I start asking questions, people are going to think I don't know what I'm doing. People expect me to know the answers
Mm.
as a leader, and they expect me to tell them what to do. And sometimes if I ask a question, all of a sudden everyone goes running down the wrong path thinking I should do this. And so as leaders, we have to set the stage and tell them, and have the humility and say, you know what, maybe I don't know the answer to this, but I will make a decision on such and such, or I am contemplating several options. Let's take a moment to brainstorm. Let's not make any decisions now, or take any action yet. Let's just think about this for a while, so that people don't all of a sudden assume, right, that they're supposed to run with it. But in terms of your teams, encouraging others to do that without having the backlash. And it takes a while to make sure that everybody on the team respects each other and can appreciate the inquiry.
I love I love that conundrum that you mentioned in terms of if I, as a leader, CTO, VP, engineering manager, start showing up with asking questions, the potential retribution that even as a leader you might feel like, wow, my team doesn't respect me, or my team, why is he or she asking this type of question? Surely they must know that, and then it could sow instability in a way.
Hmm.
And so I can see how what a tight rope that is, because at the same time, you first of all, you don't want to ask questions that so concerns about your leadership and what you should know. Secondly, you don't want to ask questions in a way that sounds interrogatory, right?
Hmm.
And so you don't want to. So now there's this issue of, how am I interrogating? Am I coming across as, a doofus with the line of questioning? And
Hmm.
then the third thing for me is what to do with the response.
Hmm. Absolutely, because there is this whole idea that we're giving voice to employees, but are we actually taking their voices into account? And is this a democracy, or who's making the decisions here? And the expectations have to be set up front, right? And how you're going to do this. And I would also add, Etienne, that there's sort of a time and a place for some of the curiosity. If we keep the questions rolling at a bad time, we can slow the process down, we can miss deadlines. So, when you're thinking about engineering, and perhaps, at the beginning of a sprint or in a retro or something like that, would be a time to ask the questions, what could we do differently? Or why is this happening? Or who is the customer? Or what do they
Mm,
really want? Or wow, I wonder if we had done this, if it would have made it better, at the end. But if you keep doing it all throughout, that can also create a lot of friction in the team. So setting the context around the curiosity, and perhaps having sort of that parking lot that we talk about. That these are great questions. We'll talk, address them later, but right now we really have to focus on getting that code finished, or we're not gonna, meet the deadline, kind of thing.
mm. Yeah, and I think the act of asking questions is an outcome of curiosity. In other words, curiosity leads to questions, but not all questions represent curiosity.
Hmm.
Dude, that is genius. I'm going to write that one down.
Yeah. Well, open-ended versus closed-ended questions for sure. Isn't it true, right? I'm married to a lawyer. I get a lot of that, right? Isn't it true that you're like, well, that's not really curious, um, but wondering. And you ask about how to pose some of these too. I mean, the I wonder is a great way to start, right? That shows curiosity, and not that, like, I don't know the answer, but I wonder if this or that is one way.
Mm. Yeah, and so two things you said there that really hit for me. One is when we spoke about the empathy,
Hmm.
to just name where you're coming from. I think is it's a wonderful coaching technique as well, right? To say, if I can, if I can just say something, or these are just my thoughts, or if it were me, but I'm curious what you would say. So I think sometimes we skip that our naming ourselves as a entity in the conversation, and we're just speaking to or speaking at. And then I think the very simple technique of just saying, hey, this is me right now, and I'm not projecting on you, or I'm not making an assumption about you. I really love that as a technique. And then secondly, I forgot the second point because the first one was so great.
we'll get back to that.
So,
I think another piece, though, that maybe, I don't know if you were going in this direction, but that I would add, though, is no judgment. I mean, that's the assumptions and judgment, that's the curiosity piece, is being open and giving somebody else the space to say something without judging them, but also the judgment will close it off,
yeah.
right? So that's also when you're talking about we're going to have a brainstorming meeting. There's no judgment here. Any idea is is going to get written down, and that'll spur other ideas. Um, but we judge others. We also judge ourselves, and sometimes that can prevent us from speaking up.
Yeah, I was going to go to the safety aspect of
Mm-hmm.
questions, because if you think about sprint planning, you think about doing what you said you were going to do, if you think about just the pressure that is on teams, relentless pressure to deliver, it seems like questioning is inefficient, and it seems like it, like you said, there's a time to ask questions. And where I was going to go with this a little bit was this notion of question everything as a culture,
Mm-hmm.
which to me feels dangerous and a little, I guess, a little entitled. And like you said, there is a time
Mm-hmm.
to question, but I feel like maybe there's never not a time to be curious, right?
Well, certainly curiosity is important at all times, I would say, but when you need to focus and get something done. Now, let's talk about teamwork, for example. You have some teams that are really efficient and they're more homogeneous, at least in their way of thinking or doing, right? They get something done. And sometimes we need that. We need a team that can really crank something out and get it done and deliver it exactly as specified. But then we also have teams that are innovating, right? Wow, we need a really good solution, a better solution. We need to beat the competition. We need to figure out how to get all of these pieces to work together. That's when you want more of the curiosity and creativity. Now, the issue that you raise is it's always good to be curious. I mean, you can always improve, right? I mean, so being curious about, wow, is our efficient team that's cranking this out really the best solution for this problem? Yes, absolutely. Raise that, and perhaps again, like at the end of the cycle, um, bring it up and to improve for the next one. Or, I mean, if you're willing to halt everything, if it's that important, like we're really going to miss our goal here, then of course bring it up. But if you have somebody who's constantly asking and slowing the team down, that can also be a problem. So, managing that as a leader, again, this is not easy to manage that.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to not knowing the outcome and not being able to predict the outcome of the conversation. I mean, I feel safest. I feel safest when I know where the conversation's going.
Mm-hmm.
I know that people are hearing my directives or the passion about why this work has to get done. I feel safest when I'm in the C-suite and I can see the nods and I'm able to get my point across. Everything else is terrifying to me.
Peter Senge has a lot to say about that, in his book, The Fifth Discipline. He also has a book that he co authored with others on presence. And there is a lot of the letting go of control, right? And being open. It is scary, and is vulnerable, but it is important if you really want to get to move forward to a deeper understanding, or making change, and understanding how things work or how somebody else is coming to a situation.
Yeah, and one way, so to me, I really think we're sort of honing in on a very important aspect of curiosity, which is letting go.
Hmm.
And one of my friends recently said that it's letting go of expectations, and expectations in a way is sort of the sucks the energy out of curiosity. I have an expectation, and therefore I am going to guide this conversation or this person towards my expectation versus saying I have no expectations. I am letting go, and I am now with this person, and now I'm curious. Now curiosity almost is a necessity to make this relationship work.
Hmm. And Etienne, that can take a bit of time too. That's one thing you were talking earlier about our sense of urgency and being so busy to get things done. I mean, how often do we let ourselves be curious? I mean, when we have 30 seconds, are we glancing at our phones to check the news or play a game or something like that and keep our minds occupied versus actually contemplating? Or when we're working with somebody, have we set up enough time in a meeting to actually ask them questions and listen to their answers versus we only have 20 minutes to dive in on the task, let's get it done and make a decision and go? Yeah, I know it's hard uh, to build that in. But sometimes, when we a little time invested in this can actually save a lot of time later or make it better
Yeah.
to work together over the long term.
Well, yeah, I think my sigh is just reflecting on my career and how how infatuated I am with my own thoughts, how happy and secure I feel when I have the solution, how much time I spend on my communication skills so I can get my point across, the jokes I rehearse so that I can slip in some bad news right behind a really funny joke. And I'm realizing as I'm thinking about that that's all just me having a rich, delicious relationship with myself, and how this word curiosity, which can so easily be categorized and put in a little shelf somewhere in a book, it's like, yeah, be curious, when really everything about curiosity is the partnership and the intention you're setting with someone else, with your team, genuinely excited and expectant for what that partnership is going to produce, and that the blood that pumps through those veins of the partnership is curiosity. How does all that sound?
No, what you're making me think of is what we've done. I mean, what we do as adults to stifle curiosity. I mean, children are the most curious, the most vulnerable. They have no inhibitions. I mean, babies, that's how they learn to to move. Wow, I got a hand. Well, what's that? I mean, they ask people questions. I mean, sometimes they can be quite brutal, like, you know, things that my, daughters asked me when she was young, like, whoa, I'm trying to refrain from some of the examples that have been the most embarrassing, but that's exactly the point. It's embarrassing. It's humiliating, right? You don't want to talk about that. And then you say, oh, don't ask those questions, right? Don't do that. Or, oh, you have to wear clothes when you go outside, because you just can't, then you start stifling kids more and more. And as adults, we have that too. And in the workplace, we have these expectations. And as teammates, we have expectations. And so it does involve letting that down and having an agreement I mean, we do this at 7 CTOs. We have team alliances, right? I mean, setting that at the expectation for the whole team to say, okay, we can ask questions and nobody's going to say that's stupid or it's a terrible idea. We can ask the questions and be supportive and say, oh, thank you. Um, we don't have to do it, but we can at least appreciate each other and be
Mm,
curious and have that
mm.
vulnerability and tell each other when we're getting to an uncomfortable spot. So there, it's letting that guard down, the inhibitions down to be curious, but making everyone on the team feel safe to do that, yet having some kind of structure around it so we can communicate how we have to work together.
You're right, and I think that that structure is gold because inside of a partnership, there are a friend of mine mentioned, if you set some, like you said, the team alliance, if you set some basic rules or basic understandings for the partnership in which curiosity can abound. So, and it's almost like, um, this kind of ties up the earlier comment around like there's a time and place for being curious. Well, the thing that I find quite fascinating and inspiring is that we try and apply curiosity inside of randomness, which then can lead to interrogation, distrust, and
Hmm.
not have the outcome. But if the intention is an alliance, it is a partnership, and inside of that partnership, like you said earlier, there is a definition of safety and an agreement that anything can be said and everything will be cleaned up afterwards. There's trust. I think that forms an incredible foundation for curiosity.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think the intention is there. And the other part is that we're not perfect, right? When we're curious, we might say something and it might sound like it's interrogation. And maybe we just said it, we didn't say it in a way that was very approachable, or maybe the other person's very sensitive for some reason about, that. I mean, we don't know. But if people communicate, like, what, here's how I'd like to be talked to, or a better way of asking the questions, things like that. We can learn rather than shutting it down. We can get better and give each other feedback along the way.
I love that. And the way to communicate in that environment, communicating with the intent to relate, I feel this. When you said that, I
Hmm.
felt this, versus the jumping to the person and bypassing that grounding of how you felt inside of that partnership or inside of that communication.
Hmm. Absolutely. Good feedback giving techniques.
Yeah, I love it. Well, is there a way for us to let's talk just as we wrap up, maybe just talk a little bit about how to foster this in our teams with each other. So as a manager, I am now wanting my team to be more curious, and this is the interesting thing. The the curiosity is not the means to the end, and maybe we can chat about this. The way I see it is curiosity is not the means to innovation and all these wonderful thoughts. I feel like the the intention or the commitment to each other is the means to curiosity, which then leads to the world of possibility. So I don't have to tell my team be more curious.
Mhm.
I have to coach my team to be more intentional and more safe with each other. From whence curiosity will be a trait or a hallmark of the team. Does that sound right to you?
Yeah, I would say building trust in the team would be another way of putting that in a bigger picture, that people have to trust each other so that when they are curious, that they can be heard, or that they're not offending others, or that they are genuinely interested. But then the
Yeah.
listening
So
piece,
it,
right? Yeah.
yes. So it's recognizing that curiosity is in this realm of the unknown,
Mhm.
that it cannot be predicated or it cannot be directed. It really leads to the true possibility of what the partnership can produce. So yes, curiosity is unknown. So now, how do we coach our teams to deal with that unknown? Whether it's something that they, like we said earlier, to not make assumptions about why the question's being asked, i.e., this person is supposed to be our leader and they're asking that question. That doesn't sound right to me. I feel like I can be super judgmental that way. It's like, why are you asking this question?
Well, as the leader can set some expectations up front, or anyone on the team can, like, I'd like to, well, I mean, you could even say the word curious. I'd like to take a moment to be curious, and that'll be like the key word, like, okay, we're in that inquiry mode, right? Or I'd like to just ask some questions for a moment before we move forward. So letting everybody know that this is the question time. And, a second piece is I
Mm,
want people to listen and respond without judgment, without assumption. And that's a lot of the letting go,
yeah,
right? Not having to be right, or, show your ego. It's just a matter of having that communication in an authentic way.
yeah. I love it. So name it. I love it. Like, hey, everybody, time to be curious. And everyone's like, oh, there he goes
I
again.
know.
Okay, let's do this.
Hopefully to be like,
Secondly,
yes, this is fun.
and then to reestablish or set the ground rules. No judgment, don't have to be right, no one's wrong. Everyone has the right to be curious. And then so speak up. And then we're cleaning up. Like, we're gonna make sure that from this session nothing is left over that is unsaid or that needs to be cleaned up. The one scenario I have in my brain, though, is that when someone is triggered, for instance, if I, as CTO, am evaluating a proposal that my VP of engineering gives to me
Mhm.
about team growth or team performance management or whatever, and I am curious why they keep referring to this author, or why didn't they even consider this other thing, or I can actually feel my curiosity fueled by rage.
Mm.
And then that I'm curious statement now becomes now actually becomes an attack or a veiled indictment. I'm sorry, everyone listening to this. I'm a horrible person, but
Aren't we all at some points? Right. I mean, that's a self management issue, right? I mean, if you want to be curious when you are enraged and you think that they should have done it differently, that would perhaps take away some of the curiosity because you have a guidance to a specific end in mind. But understanding that and recognizing that in yourself and saying, you know what, perhaps either taking a breath, calm down, or having a script already in your head. When I'm feeling that way, this is the question I need to ask, but I need to make sure I'm ready to ask it without that tone of voice, like, oh, I'm wondering why
mm,
uh, you chose this author, as opposed to, I'm wondering why you chose this author, right? I mean, there are several ways you could say it, but part of that is realizing, you know what, another thing would be like, thank you. And then I'd love to have some time to reflect on this. Can we set up another meeting to talk some more? And then you can, calm down and then have that curiosity later.
Yeah, and I think I'm realizing as we speak that the I am curious, which is a colloquially
Mhm.
accepted way to speak in our circles, um, doesn't mean that you are have a curiosity mindset. And so just the fact that you're saying I am curious doesn't mean that you have the mindset.
Yeah, and this is also something that comes up in Peter Senge's work of participative curiosity versus reflective curiosity, right? So if you're participating and acting curious and saying you're curious, that you can all ask the questions and sort of have the party line, but not really absorb it internally. But when you're reflective, curiously, that means that you are actually open to changing your mind and saying, I wonder how this new information could fit, or is it something different? And you're taking that in, and you're actually are willing to make a shift, or at least consider something new, rather than being steadfast in your way and just parroting some lines that the company has told you to say.
Interesting. So participatory curiosity.
That is, I mean, obviously you would want to participate in it in a constructive way, but to really be curious, you need to internally reflect on something and be open to it,
Mm.
right? I mean,
So
boy,
if I
yeah.
go ahead, go ahead.
I was just going to say this takes me back to my master's thesis on dissent in teams, right? And when somebody says something different or something that you're not expecting, I actually studied the devil's advocate, right? We can all agree on something and have the answer, but let's just play devil's advocate and just what happens if we all consider this. If people don't believe that you're taking this seriously, they're not necessarily going to change their minds. But if you actually say, I really disagree, or I have a different perspective, and people are forced to reckon with that internally, then they might make the shift. And so when we're having these conversations with others, it's a matter of um, actually being open, or maybe having somebody ask questions deeply enough where they're taken seriously, but you have to internally be willing to make that change. Otherwise, you're just all going to keep going, and the meeting's over, and it was fine, and nothing changes.
I love that. You did a thesis on dissent.
Yeah, you can see where I'm coming from. Yeah, right. The dissent and how important that is. I mean, this is whole like that diversity in teams, why it's so important to get different perspectives. And there might be conflict as a result. People disagree. And if you keep this conflict going around the issue, not the people, you can come to more creative solutions or deliberate to more thorough answers. But once you start attacking each other, that's when it becomes a problem. So, I mean, that is another thing too with the curiosity. I mean, there's so much divisiveness in our society right now. We're scared to ask questions to people because, we might, hit on a topic that I disagree with or adamantly. But how can we be curious and listen to somebody and hear their perspective without judging it, or maybe even understanding it to some extent, but not attacking them personally?
Mm.
Anyway, that's my
That
my work on on dissent and
I
conflict.
love it. I love it because I think I have this image in my head where we can spar with words because we either have made up our mind to not engage because we don't trust this person or we don't agree with the premise, or even when someone's pitching us or our employees are petitioning us for something or asking us about something. I think there's always this choice of am I truly going to commit brain cycles to this thing right now?
Hmm.
And I kind of see this image where I can be completely checked out. I'm not going to change my mind. I don't believe in this, but it's important to you. So I guess I'll ask a few token questions and kind of spar with you on the words a little bit. But I love what you said about the reflecting, truly taking it in a way that people around you can trust that this is important to you, and then from that mindset, the questions or the demonstration of curiosity feels more productive and more you know uplifting. Yeah, just to me, it just all comes back to this it really is a commitment. It's a partnership. It's a choice to be engaged. It's holding the other person in almost in higher esteem than yourself. It's and then from that place, the curiosity is genuine. And I'll end off with an example. Sometimes when I talk to CTOs to join seven CTOs, I will, most of the time when we meet, I will feel like I have something to share. I have an experience, and I want to bring you into that. So I'm curious about, where are you from? What did you do? Blah blah blah. And I would say that curiosity is genuine. Conversational curiosity, I think, is a technique. It's cool. And I think it can be genuine. But sometimes I have a shift where, as I'm talking to the person, I almost have this oh shit moment. Like, wow, I'm talking to someone um, that has accomplished, in my mind, this. It's like the role shifts, and I wish I was like this with everyone, but just the and I'm like, I look at them and I'm like, holy moly's, I came into this conversation thinking that I was gonna impart to you. But now I'm like, wait a minute, I can actually learn from this person. They have something to teach me. They have all this expertise or wisdom and I feel my mind shift. And I almost want to say that that's the real curiosity, is when you're able to shift to a, I have something to learn from you. You're everything. I want to learn from you, and I'm genuinely curious about, oh, so what do you think about this? And so that to me has been an interesting experience as I've evangelized seven CTOs.
Yeah, I would say one of the reasons I went from engineering to psychology back when I changed careers many years ago was because I am curious about people, and I do believe that you can learn something from everybody. And for some people, like I said, some people are more curious than others. Some people aren't as interested in learning from others uh, at all times, in all contexts. That's okay, but that's something I love. So that's why I do this for a living. But when you're in these conversations, and that is a way that you can have that mindset, though, when you want to be curious, is realizing that everybody has something to convey or teach you that you don't know already.
Mm, I love it, Joanie. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's been fun.
I'm curious, do you have anything else you want to add or coach me on?
Well, let's see. I don't. I think we're good. I think we're good.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. Thank you for joining me in the CTO studio, and I'll see you soon.